we wrap up 2022 and look ahead to 2023. On this episode, I welcome back Braden Boakes, and we talk about everything that happened this year and then maybe what's going to happen next year. Atlas All Access starts now. Welcome back, Braden Boakes. I appreciate you being here with us today.
I'm always happy to be here.
Okay, so if someone had told us at the beginning of 2022, this is what it was going to look like at the end, would you have believed them?
Yeah, I think so.
Wow, I would have said no.
Really?
I didn't know what to expect, but I guess I didn't. I guess go ahead. Answer first.
Coming from 2020 into 2021 and then 2021 into 2022.
Sure.
I think that what happened from the beginning of 2022 to now was much less dramatic than the last 2 years. So I don't think that we got that far away from where I think logically the industry could have gone.
If you had told me at the beginning of 22 this is how it was going to end, I would have said no, because 22 started with such a bang. Right, there was such a growth period in the industry, just in general, that I thought, okay, you're going to ride this wave for a while, and that didn't necessarily happen, right? And we'll go through kind of the recap. I don't want to go quarter by quarter, but I want to kind of go through the year and talk about how staffing has changed over this year. That first quarter was a crazy ride, and then all of a sudden, second quarter, it kind of, I don't want to say normal, because what's normal anymore, but it went back to maybe kind of what we would expect before.
Right.
And right now, as we stand right now here in December 8th, is that right? December 8th, we're kind of back to normal. It's kind of back to a regular traveling nurse, travel, healthcare cycle. It seems like it anyway. Do you feel that on the recruiting side?
Yeah, and I mean, that's kind of why I just think that we're not that far off from what I would have expected. I mean, we've been talking about the industry normalizing for the last 2 years. I do think that we are finally at a point. It's different than before, but I think that we have hit a similar, but maybe a little bit more elevated normal from what we had before COVID.
Gotcha. All right, so let's look back on the year. So we started off pretty strong in the first quarter, like I talked about. We hit the road again, right? We did how many different meet and greets? We went to how many different cities? I mean, you were a part of a lot of those, right?
I was on all but one of our meet and greets and travel, TravCon, things like that. So yeah, the only one I didn't go to was Virginia.
And that was towards the end of it was August-ish time frame. So
well, yeah, you guys beat me like a horse. I was about ready to drop.
Well, I needed you fresh for TravCon. And TravCon obviously this year was bigger than any year in the past, right? It was by far one of the biggest years they'd seen from attendance, and then from our standpoint, from just coming through the booth and people coming to our events and that type of thing. I don't think we've ever seen a bigger year than that.
I think all of our events throughout the entire year, we had a lot of firsts. The Phoenix meet and greet was the largest meet and greet that we've ever had. I mean, we had close to 100 people show up to that.
Yeah.
It was our first year in the booth, so we didn't really know what to expect. And I think that I was very happy with how that worked out. I don't know how you feel, but we had a ton of traction. We had a lot of people come to the events to where we were filling up RSVPs within minutes, to the point where Dolan had to shut them down and redo them.
Right.
I mean, 2022 was a lot of really big events for us.
The surprise pool party.
Yep.
Because there really wasn't anything else happening that day. And the number of people that it was a happy accident. Dolan had published a list that shouldn't have been published necessarily.
Fired.
Gone. He's still over there. It's fine. He's still over there. And the RSVP list for that was huge, just because there wasn't anything else going on there.
Right.
There wasn't there wasn't anything, and so that turned out to be something pretty big too. And we had a lot of fun doing that one. That was by far maybe our most successful pool party that we ever had.
I think that we weren't planning on doing a pool party, and then I almost feel like pool parties are Atlas.
Yeah.
We kind of started most of the big pool parties, so I'm not really surprised that we accidentally stumbled into one anyway. Was it accidentally that Dolan released that list, or was it it was just fate coming about to do what it needs to do?
Right. All right, so we'll kind of wrap up the year, but I want to talk about next year. What do you think going into next year? Because I've got some opinions. I don't know if they're strong opinions, but I've got some opinions of it as to what next year might look like. What do you think is going to happen?
I think we're going to continue to see the path that we've seen this year. Things are going to, rates, hospital needs, cycles are going to continue to solidify back into some sort of pattern. It may be a little bit different than we were expecting, but we're going to start to see pediatrics are going to start to cycle again.
Yeah,
we're going to start to see a heavier flu season as opposed to just heavy coverage for the entire year. I think that we're going to start to see COVID vaccines and like COVID needs are going to start to turn into just similar to like flu vaccines. They'll be cyclical. We're going to see more declinations in terms of like who hospitals are going to allow to work at the hospitals. And I think that we're going to continue to see rates kind of level off. I think that they're still going to be $10, $20, $30 higher than they were before for like specialties, but instead of $180 bill rate for a job, we're going to start to see what used to be an $80 bill rate. We're going to see it normalize at like 100 to 110.
I think you're probably right. I think there are a lot of talking heads out there that think that they understand the industry that have never spent a day in our industry. And they have predicted rates back in the 80s or 90s for a specialty nurse, for an ICU, ER, that type of nurse. I simply don't see that happening.
We're already seeing it with some of the vendors that have put out rates like that, and they're quickly having to backtrack because they're not getting any traction because there's still jobs in the areas that are, they're $30 an hour higher.
Right.
You can't go from all the way up here and immediately bring it down here and expect there not to be some sort of backlash.
Right. I don't want to compare this to 08, 09, but I lived through that as a client manager working on the hospital side. And I saw there was a lot of competition because it was really, really good from like 05 to 08, right? It was a good industry to be in. So you saw a lot of pop-up companies, right? That type of thing. After 08, 09, they went away, right? The system kind of solved itself. I believe the same thing is going to happen through all of this too. You've seen a lot of really fast-growing companies pop up. Do you think? And you've seen it yourself on those job boards out there that this company's paying $200 or $300 more than some of the very highest-paying companies, and where does that land? How do they find their way through all of this, or do they?
I think that there's a lot of agencies that don't want to find their way through this. I think that there's a lot of agencies that started during the pandemic that their whole goal was not long-term taking care of travelers. It was a business opportunity, get in while the getting's good,
right, and
then cut their losses and leave. I think we're going to see a lot of those companies that were, they set up to try and take advantage of rates, and then their game plan was to get bought, merged, or sell out. So I think we're going to see that.
I guess, okay, so then two questions come out of that. What happens to those employees and what happens to those travelers?
There's two things that are going to happen to the travelers is, if their goal was to get bought or merged, then they're going to roll into a company that maybe they were avoiding when they were looking for an agency, and suddenly they work for them.
Sure.
And for the employees, like the recruiters and everything, I think they're either going to go find other industries because that was the plan,
sure,
or they're going to be looking for opportunities with the existing agencies.
Yeah, true. And how many of those will stay on with the existing agency is the question that I think that comes up often, is because there's a number of schools of thought out there. There's a few of them where they've burned out. Those recruiters have burned out from a number of agencies in the past and landed here during the right time, where do they go after that, right? The resume may not lend itself to another recruiting job at that point, unfortunately.
Right. Well, and there's a lot of them that there's a lot of recruiters that can point to a career that where they were very successful. I think it'll be interesting to see how they perform in an environment where you're having to recruit as opposed to just build a resume and submit to one job and get one placement.
Just push buttons, right? It was a very plug and play, fish in a barrel kind of thing for a while. That's absolutely true. So yeah, the industry is going to change. That's my take on it. It's going to change a lot. You're going to see the normalization of rates. You're going to see the normalization of jobs. You're going to see a number of companies either flame out because they grew too fast, and then they can't keep up. Because quite honestly, with how we're paid from the hospital, banks aren't going to float them money for that, right? I mean, we lived that every day in the early days of Atlas during our high growth period, which had nothing to do with any kind of pandemic or anything like that. But we still struggled with that. How fast can you grow and still get paid and still be able to pay your employees on time? That's a whole separate problem that agencies are going to have. But at the same time, mergers, acquisitions, that type of thing, like you're going to see a whole lot more of those here over 2023. I think more so than any year that we've ever experienced before.
I wonder which one's going to kill more smaller agencies. Is it going to be the banks because of rates, or is it because of is it going to be other agencies just because of mergers?
Well, I think, or is it going to be because other agencies? There are much larger agencies out there that merge with other large agencies and squeeze out the smaller players, because that's going to happen as well too. It'll be interesting when we come back here in a year and talk about what happened, because I think it's going to be a lot. I think there's going to be quite a few changes through our industry.
So we talk a lot about smaller agencies getting pushed out, but I mean, we were a smaller agency at one point, and we are where we are now. Where do you see the industry going for maybe not even just like startup agencies, but just like that smaller to mid tier? Where do you think they're going?
It's not going to be easy, quite honestly, because we were there early on, and you have to find your way. And if you don't figure that out quickly, we figured it out really quick. We weren't tier one with all of the larger sub vendors. So AMN, Cross Country, Aya, Health Trust, if you're not tier one with them, if you're not one of their premier partners, then you're going to get squeezed immediately. It doesn't matter if you're tier 3, or it doesn't matter. You're not getting fillable jobs at that point. You're getting jobs. They're not fillable jobs at that point, and they're not at a fillable rate. You've got to establish yourself. You've got to figure out your place in the industry. We figured that out early on for us. Steve and I figured that out probably 2 years in after we bought the company from the original the original guy that funded it. We figured that out, and after that, it worked pretty well. But it was touch and go for a while there. It was tough. It really, really was. During a time when it was very easy to borrow money from a bank, when banks were contacting us, it was still very difficult to do. So when it gets more difficult to borrow money from a bank, to get a secure ABL, to find that larger banking partner, I wouldn't want to be a company with 500 travelers right now. I wouldn't. I would not. That would be a very, very tough position to be in, quite honestly.
That's funny that you say 500 travelers, because I think we had 600 travelers when I started like 5 years ago.
Well, and it sticks in my head because there's kind of a teetering point there. When I left the company I was with before, it was right around 500 travelers, right? And you either grow organically, you merge, or you die. I mean, and there's three dramatic different paths you can choose there, and not every one of them is guaranteed. So it's going to be an interesting 2023 for sure. Give me a prediction for 23 that I don't know yet.
I think that I'm going to follow the Dolan path, and I think I'm going to go long hair.
That's a terrible idea. That is such a bad idea.
I think that we are going to see 2023 is going to continue to be a normalization year. I think that we are going to hit some sort of stride with normalcy. I think that we're going to see rates start to stabilize where we've been basically saying we expected them to stabilize for the last 2 years. I think we're finally on our way to that happening, though. I think that we're going to see a lot of changes with big hospital systems and who they're working with as their main vendor partners, because I think that there's a lot of opportunity for large VMSs and large MSPs to shake things up.
Yep.
So I think we'll see that, and I think that it's, I mean, just like every year, it'll be great for us because we leverage great partners with all of our vendors. But we're going to have to get used to, hey, this hospital, we need to talk to this vendor, not this vendor that maybe we've been talking to for years.
Yeah. I think you're 100% on it. We're already kind of seeing it anyway right now. I think on my side, you're only going to see more consolidation. Our industry will continue to consolidate. Similar sized companies will merge because, okay, this company has this piece that this one doesn't have, and they become stronger because of it. And I think you will see companies enter the top 10 in revenue in our industry that have never been there before because of that, because they leverage a strong allied position, a strong long-term care position, and then a strong acute care position too, and become a very formidable player in the industry. I believe that's going to happen as well. And it won't just happen with once or twice. I think probably 4 or 5 times. It'll change considerably.
I was just going to say, I think this is going to be a big year for Allied, because I think it's been a weak area of the industry for a lot of companies, and there's a lot of hospitals that need them.
Absolutely. And I think Allied got ravaged during the pandemic, and it has come back very, very strong, at least from the staffing side. So, all right. Braden, thank you. Hopefully within a year you're back here and we're talking about what happened in 23.
With longer hair.
Well, we'll see about that. All right. We'll see you in 2023.